We're honored to be joined by the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, host of the Charlie Kirk Show, Charlie Kirk. Charlie, welcome to the show. I want to start.
Thank you.
Where I wasn't anticipating starting, but hearing this news earlier in the day makes me think that Pride Month is going completely different than I anticipated. Today, we learned that Starbucks has instructed its locations to pull back from their Pride decorations throughout the store. And I think I said this last week, and now I think there's even more momentum. I actually think we're winning in this culture war as it relates to Pride. We actually have some wind at our back. Is that the way you feel?
Shockingly, yes. I mean, the bad guys, the enemy, they're finally showing some weakness, some shame. I didn't know they actually had some shame. I thought it was all about pride, no matter what. We don't care about the cost, evangelistic, secular zeal. I feel the same way, and I'm equally as surprised because, I fight these people on campuses all the time, and one of their rules is that you should never show any weakness. You must be just belligerently, ferociously aggressive at all times. But now you're seeing a new element, which is in a weaker economy, right, Jason, with interest rates a little bit higher, the economy a little bit more fragile, stocks going down a little bit. All of a sudden, a different decision-making matrix is entering, which is, hey, guys, this whole Pride thing is fine, whatever, but our stock is down 15%. And we're no longer the number one beer, or we're no longer able to compete against other companies because finally there is a consumer price to be paid. And I think our side deserves a lot of credit. We are starting to make decisions based on whether or not a company shares our values. We're not all the way there yet, Jason. Once half the country truly starts to unify their purchasing power, we're going to see even more stuff change. So this is just the beginning stages, but we're finally starting to see these otherwise untouchable companies start to be a little bit hesitant, be a little bit fearful. The Starbucks one is shocking, Jason. If there was one company that I did not expect any sort of wavering, it would be Starbucks. They are notoriously one of the flag wavers, literally, of the Pride agenda. And yet even they're saying this is too much for us. That means they're seeing an impact directly to their profits, and this ridiculous propaganda campaign that is nauseating, that is over the top, is finally starting to threaten some of their corporate profitability and future. I think we have to keep the pressure on, and I'm finally seeing some momentum.
Yeah, I'm thinking that what happened to Bud Light and what happened to Target clearly had an impact, but I also think they probably must have some internal research that says like, oh my God, this could turn into a tsunami.
Yep.
That this whole thing with sexualizing kids, I'm sure they have data and have done research to like, hey man, parents and normally progressive people are rejecting the sexualization of kids, libs of TikTok and this whole social media, put it in people's face. What happened at the White House yesterday, flying the Pride flag. I think they're all like, oh my God, we have finally gone too far.
Yes.
And they have research beyond Bud Light and all that says that.
Well, two thoughts. Number one, I think people are disgusted when the White House is turned into a strip club. When you have trannies showing up and literally undressing, that's not an exaggeration. They're taking their clothes off at the White House. I mean, that is a desecration and an insult to the people's house. I think most ordinary Americans say like, yeah, that's not for me. But Jason, I think you're right, but also, wouldn't you love to be kind of a fly on the wall to hear the market research firm that they hired in the corporate boardroom? At Coca-Cola, guys, it's not a good idea to support the castration of children. Wow, we never would have thought that. Could you imagine like them sharing it in a corporate boardroom? This stuff is obvious to you and I, where I agree they probably have overwhelming amounts of data that pandering to a incredibly vocal, aggressive minority is not a good way to get 80% of the country to buy your product.
The other thing that I find fascinating, that I think you would be an expert in this regard because you do so much work with faith leaders, the fact that the pushback isn't really coming from the church, it's coming from believers that have started organizations like Turning Point USA that work. Jeremy Boring and the Daily Wire, the Blaze, and what we're doing. The church isn't really the leader of this. It's what believers have built outside the church that's the leader of this pushback. And is that a good thing, a bad thing, or it doesn't matter who the leader is?
Well, it's certainly necessary. And I think you're exactly right. We're seeing this kind of new generation of Christian entrepreneurs that are building big and bold and beautiful things to fulfill Psalm 97:10, which is to love God and hate evil. That if you love God, you must hate evil. And this is something modern Christianity has done a very poor job of. Modern Christianity has written some extremely good music. I listen to it. They do a lot of good rock concerts. They put on things that are closer to a TED Talk than actually preaching the Word of God. They're really good at parking cars at mega churches and serving coffee in lobbies of big churches. Not too good at hating evil. But that is a component. We are called to hate evil. In fact, Jesus himself confronted the demonic and using obviously his authority as the Son of God and part of the Godhead, excommunicating the demonic. We are called to also fight that evil. And I don't think the American church is even contested in that arena. So you look at the Blaze, you look at Daily Wire and Turning Point USA, three great examples. We are kind of filling the void where a lot of church and, Jason, parachurch ministries are not fighting. I mean, there are a lot of these parachurch ministries. You could think of Young Life or Campus Crusade or K-Love, and they do good work. But are they really fighting against the trans agenda? Are they really communicating to their audience about the grooming of children? No, they say we're not political and we don't take stances on it. I think that's a vanilla cop-out. This is a biblical spiritual battle where they're going after children. This is not Republican or Democrat. No, this is good and evil. And if the church and parachurch ministries aren't going to stand up, then a new generation of believers and spirit-filled entrepreneurs are going to build things to be able to fill that void. So I'm encouraged, Jason, because the old way of doing things of pastors that used to do cop-outs, and I mention them a lot, kind of these nice guy pastors, happy talk pastors, their time is over. Their congregations are shrinking. Their ministries are really evaporating. They're not finishing well. And now it's time for us to rebuke this evil that is the new pagan secular religion. Let's be very clear, Jason. There is no such thing as a religionless society in America. You just replace Christianity with a counterfeit religion that looks very similar to the earth worship, to the worship of self that the Bible was actually originally written as a refutation of. The first 5 books of Moses, what we call the Pentateuch or the Torah, was at war with pagan polytheism, worship of self, worship of earth, worship of sexual behavior. And now we're just seeing the kind of old gods resurrected, and we call it pride.
Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.